At New Balance, we believe if you run, you're a runner, however you choose to do it. Because when you're not worried about doing things the right way, you're free to discover your way. And that's what running's all about. Run your way at newbalance.com/running.
Everyone knows that it doesn't truly feel like Valentine's without the flowers. So whatever you do, don't forget the flowers. Beat the Valentine's rush and order early at 1-800-Flowers.com. Right now, when you order early from 1-800-Flowers, you can get up to 40% off gorgeous bouquets and one-of-a-kind arrangements that are guaranteed to wow. Don't put this off. Delivery dates are limited, so get up to 40% off today at 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST. That's 1-800-Flowers.com/ACAST.
Hey there, we're Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy, your book besties who take the novels you love seriously.
We embrace and respect modern fantasy, romance, and romantasy books written by women, and so it's in our nature to analyze these books as we would any other novel we might have dissected in school.
With our combined 13 years of literary academic training, we use our education to analyze and give voice to reasons you may love or hate today's popular books. This is Jac.
And I'm Amy. And this is part 2 of this week's episode, where we're discussing chapters 7 through 10 of Sarah J. Maas's debut novel, Throne of Glass.
Before we dive in, don't forget about Spilt, spoilers, perspective, interpretations, language, and themes.
If you'd like more information, please go back and listen to the start of part 1 of this week's episode.
All right, now we're in chapter 9. We're making progress, guys. Selena gets all dolled up, and we get to see her second dress. She ran a hand down her gown. Seafoam white. This is the part where I don't want you to read. Look away. Look at me. Just watch me. Do you have me that far off?
No.
Okay. Put me in front of your notes.
Okay.
She ran a hand down her gown. Seafoam white lace bloom from the sweeping neckline, washing upon her breast from the powdered green ocean of silk that made up the dress. A red sash covered her waist, forming an inverted pink that separated the bodice from the explosion of skirts beneath. Patterns of clear green beads were embroidered in whorls and vines across the whole of it, and bone-colored stitching stretched along the ribs. Tucked inside her bodice was the small makeshift hairpin dagger, though it poked mercilessly at her chest. She lifted her hands and touched her curl and pinned hair. Now, this is the part where I know your note said, what the fuck? This is ugly. However, the dress that she sees the king in, the dress that Kale will be like, holy shit, you're pretty, is the dress in Terracin colors.
Green
and silver.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I think what threw me off are the touches of red.
Well, I got another point.
Okay.
I got another. Hold on. The touches of red represents the invasion of the king. Like the fact that it's cut, it's a sash that's around her waist. You can say it's almost like a death cut around her stomach.
Yeah.
Like he's gutted her and her family.
Yeah. And she's wearing red slippers, which I can see through what you're suggesting, that her feet are being led by the king. She's being controlled by the king and what her actions will be. Yep. I think you make a really, really great point. I think what stood out to me with this dress that I do think SJM did really, really well was the elements of nature that she weaves into the description, which is very much in touch with Terracin and Selena's love for nature, right? Yeah. Seafoam, white lace, washing upon her breasts, ocean of silk, and then we get the vines of beading. It's very beautiful, and you can tell how there is talent in SJM's descriptions. And I think maybe one of our listeners in past comments has said, like, why the hell does SJM spend so much time on describing clothing? And we can see why. There are symbolic reasons for it.
Yeah. We will never know the symbolic reason to a fuchsia hair tie, though.
No. I think what really threw me off was while I understand the red and green combination is Terracin and Adeline, it also just makes me think of Christmas.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
I really do need to see this in the vision board for
I
that SJM did, where it's like, I just, what are you thinking? How is it
Yeah.
not Christmas?
Yeah.
Agreed. Philippa sees her, and we're getting more ugly truths in this world. Quote, "It's such a pity you are who you are," Philippa said, turning Selena to face her. "I wouldn't be surprised if you managed to ensnare some lord into marriage, maybe even his highness if you were charming enough." Woo! And ooh, okay. My feelings would be hurt so quickly. I would have cried by now. If Philippa is showing that the highest achievement a woman can make, the greatest compliment a woman can have, is that she can, quote, ensnare,
Mhm.
implying trapping. Ensnare is literally a trap. So
Mhm.
the greatest compliment that she could give is say, "Hey, you're pretty enough to trap a man into marriage.
Mhm.
Good
Maybe
for you.
even his highness.
If you're charming enough." If
Yeah.
all of it is, of course, it's not if you're nice enough, smart enough, be you enough. It's about being charming. And that, that's the truth of this world. That's the truth of this court. Then Selena complains about hearing someone say that, hearing Caltaine say that she was brought to the court for the prince. And Philippa says, "It's not meant as an offense, Poppet. Beautiful ladies are always associated with the crown prince. You should be flattered that you're attractive enough to be considered his lover." Ow. Ow. It really is her value is based off of perception. It's a good job. Caltaine
Mhm.
was threatened by you. That's because you're pretty. And
Yeah.
that's because you will probably be wanted sexually by the right man. Not even wanted for marriage at this point. It's good job. You are an object enough
Mhm.
for a man.
To satisfy his sexual desire.
Yeah, good job. You're an object. The prettiest object around. I'm not critiquing this in a way of saying, how dare you, SJM, or screw you,
Mhm.
Philippa. I think that this is done so well to establish this world
Yeah.
and to establish what Selena is going to be working against.
Yeah, and this is not something Selena is accustomed to. I think that if she had grown up in a royal court, she would, but she's thrown off by this because she did not grow up in a world where her value was around her sexuality and
Yeah.
her attractiveness. Her value was behind how effective what she was as an assassin, and that is not inherently a feminine trait.
But at the same time, Selena does make a comment in the previous episode saying that she learned as an adolescent that how to enhance her beauty. So there is a level where she does
Mhm.
know femininity equals good. Femininity equals power. We've been
Right.
talking about her being able to manipulate feminine and charm to her advantage. So yes, she does know on a level
Yeah.
that that's important, but this is to the extreme.
Yeah, and I think it's while she was able to use it to manipulate others, this is probably the first time she's encountered it where it's a weapon against her as
Agreed.
well.
Agreed.
So at this point, Kale then storms into Selena's room. Quote, "You," he began, then stopped as Selena faced him. His brows lowered as his eyes traveled along her body. His head cocked, and he opened his mouth as if to say something, but only shook his head and scowled. Jack, I don't know if you have comments about the fact that his eyes travel along her body, which feels very violating. But as you mentioned, this is probably the first time Kale is really noticing Selena for her femininity. He's noticing how pretty she looks. And in my mind, is foreshadowing that future attraction and interest that we're going to see play out. On the other hand, though, from a power perspective, I also wonder if Kale is looking at her, wondering why she's in a dress, knowing he's about to drag her to meet all the other competitors.
Yeah, I mean, I think yes to
I think
everything.
I think it I think it's both.
I think it's both. SJM is doing a lot to establish a love triangle because
Mhm.
who's the one other person who looked her body up and down? That was Dorian. That was just
Yeah.
a few chapters ago. We're not even in chapter 10, and we've had both men look at her up and down. And
Mhm.
it's a moment where we, the reader, we, Selena, end up almost feeling a victory
Mhm.
when the men look her up and down. And I can at least applaud the fact that there is a sense of, you're into me. of
Mhm.
looking me up and
Mhm.
down versus they're looking me up and down. What's wrong? Is there something out of place? So I can at least applaud that being the takeaway, because I know for me, I just would say, does this not match? Does this not look good? Is there something wrong with
Mm,
me?
mhm.
But at the same time, when I'm feeling confident, look me up and down, and I'm thinking, damn right, I look good. So you
Yep.
do get a sense there, but I agree. I think this is a combination, and we do know that he thinks that she's pretty.
Yeah.
I'm not surprised that the moment where she takes men's breath away, who look her up and down, because we're about to see the king examine her too,
Mhm.
is because she's wearing her colors, her Terrasen colors.
Mhm. I think that's a great point. And what I love about this next sequence is that unlike the very sec not first chapter, probably second chapter, when Dorian looked her up and down and was like, ugh, how dare he look me up and down? She welcomes the positive feedback from men and from those around her because she knows what she looks like in this moment. And I like to think of her right now as a battery being recharged. Every time she gets an appreciative glance or someone says something about her appearance, it is powering her up because it is giving her that confidence she has been lacking since she's been a slave. Quote, she smiled at the guards outside her door, and her smile burst into a grin at their exchanged approving glances.
It's that perception and attraction is what's important. It's what's going to help her. It's probably what helped her be a better assassin. It's also, the more people find her attractive, the more stunning she is, the farther away she is as being that slave before the salt mines. It's more of a separation. That person who is a slave who went through everything that they went through is not this person, right? There's a larger gap. Uh I do want to say is sometimes where she ends up being, thinking, "Oh my god, they looked at me, they're into me." And I just, babe, stop being surprised. You look good. But however, she knows how the world works, right? Because the guards check her out, and the fact that her smile burst into a grin at their exchange, like she gets it. She gets what she's doing to men. But I think what I'm also seeing with this kind of contradicting moments is the fact that she doesn't fully know what to do with it. I think she
Mhm.
does in theory know what to do with it, but she's still figuring it out.
Yeah, I feel like to me, what this comes across as is she's out of practice. She's been in a salt mine for a year.
Yeah.
And yeah, she knows she's attractive, but on one hand, I could also see her being like, have the times changed? Have the trends changed? That what I think is attractive is no longer attractive.
Yep.
And so she's getting the reassurances that no, what you thought continues to be true.
So they're on their way to go see the king, and Selena is nervous, but keep in mind that it's because she's trying to hide her real identity at this point. Quote, her arms became heavy and she forgot about her aching feet and crushed ribs. In the garden, queer, off-kiltered clock tower began chiming the hour. They reached the top of the staircase and rushed down a long hallway. She couldn't breathe. There's a lot happening here. She's starting to kind of have the beginnings of a panic attack, and it's a good use of showing that of the use of the clock, right? We spent some time on that clock earlier in this chapter. We got to see that in the previous chapter of just, hey, clock is scary. So of course now this clock is counting down to her own anxiety and fear. There's not much time left.
Mm-hmm.
Next quote. Quote. The earth was far below, far, far below. They were in the glass edition. She didn't want to be here. She couldn't be in the glass castle. It's that panic. She's now being forced to face her fear. So at this point, the castle represents the king, and he is her greatest fear. That is the man who ruined her home, who killed her parents, who took everything away from her. And she can't be here. She can't be in the glass castle. I can't see him. He's going to recognize me.
Mm-hmm.
And as she gets nervous, I feel like Kale gives her some really good advice about the king. And I think we should all remember this. Except not really, but we should all remember the first half of this. He's just a man, but a man you should treat with the respect his rank demands. Again, let's just remember the first part. He's just a man. But it is some surprisingly good advice here, and it's the removal of perception, right? And it's the embrace of reality. The reality is, hey, he's just a man. He's got a lot of rank. You should respect that. So he's taken that perception away. He's inserted reality.
I had to ask myself when I was reading this section, how does Kale tell that Selena's nervous? Because usually I would say Selena is good at hiding when she's anxious. So for him to recognize it is very telling. It's telling that she's not hiding right now. She does, in fact, feel very vulnerable and is very revealing, just like the glass castle is. Just before they go in to see the king at the end of the chapter, Kale tells Selena, quote, "You look rather pretty today." Selena raised her chin as they entered the crowded room. I think Kale has a pulse on Selena. He
Yeah.
knows that she's anxious. His advice about the fact that the king is just a man helps, but it hasn't overcome her anxiety. So that when he compliments her, it bolsters her and gives her the confidence to move forward, walk in with her chin held high. I think Kale was speaking honestly, but he's also feeding into what Selena needs, and that's power.
I get that.
Yeah,
If I
I do
had
too.
if I had like I always love when my friends tell me I look pretty. I love it when a stranger tells me I'm pretty. I love it when a guy that I find attractive tells me I'm pretty. It's suddenly try to stop me. You can't.
Yeah, yeah. I know you are like me, so we replay those encounters
A
when
lot.
we need to.
A lot in my head. Yes. Yes.
We then get into chapter 10, and this is the first time, I don't know if you noticed, I'm sure you did, Jack, that the floor of the palace is described as something other than plain marble or white. Quote, "She saw the floor first, red marble, its white veins illuminated in the light of the sun, which slowly vanished as the opaque glass doors ground shut." Now, I know that Jack has talked about red being this invasion of red, the invasion of the king and his royal family, but this is in the addition. This is something he's built himself, which so it represents kind of his seat of power. I also feel like because it's so different from the other sections of the palace that we've seen thus far, it also implies infection or something being tainted. And that reflects the king himself.
Yeah, the red, like I said, it's a bit on the nose, but I love a nose, and we're seeing that moment, and because SJM is a new author at this point, it's going to be like I said, more in your face. But what I kind of like about the red and the white, it made me think of blood and tendons for whatever
Mm-hmm.
reason. Of this. Or you can look at it as the contrast, right? The white and the red, and good versus bloody. They're trying to battle it out. So there's a lot of ways you can view the red in this marble.
There are, I love that way to look at it. There's, as with a lot of SGM's work, there is a lot of different ways to interpret what's happening. And we don't know what she intended, but we like what we're seeing. There are also more implications that things are kind of unusual in this throne room. Quote, "A fireplace occupied most of the wall. It was monstrous, shaped like a roaring, fanged mouth, a blazing fire burning within. There was something greenish about the flame, something that made her spine straighten." Now, Selena is very familiar with fire based on her background and her magic. So, for her to see a green flame, something that is out of the ordinary, she knows that it is unnatural. And for us, it's very Valg coded.
Yeah. At this point, Selena's kind of having these full PTSD moments. Quote, "It made her bones crack and splinter, made her feel the astonishing cold of a winter long since past." We are getting these little clues about her at this point. We understand that she was found, she lost her family, and there was a winter long since past. And it was bad, right? Not surprising, though, that this all happens when the king sees her in royal colors,
In her
right?
royal
Yeah,
colors.
in her royal colors and the terrace green. So now we're going to get the moment where Dorian takes in Selena. An expression of surprise crossed his features when he beheld her in her finery, but it quickly melted into a wry grin as he looked towards his father. She might have returned it had she not been focused so much on keeping her hands from shaking. So we have this moment of Dorian also being entranced by her beauty and how she looks. But additionally, I would like to point out that there's a feeling of ownership and pride from Dorian, right? He's almost shocked with how she looks and he feels smug about it. He grins at that, but it's not the kind of pride that he would feel proud of Selena. It's the kind of pride of how she looks and the fact that he's the one who chose her and he's the one who gets to show her off. And the fact that she wants to match his grin in a way is, I feel like, her trying to meet him on the battlefield of trying to even the situation, because his grin is pure ownership. His grin is
Mm-hmm.
purely, oh, you're my champion. I'm the one who found you. You're like, I get to display you now. And she smiles back at him almost as if she's in on the joke. She's
Mm-hmm.
in on the situation. She is not in on anything. She's been forced here.
Yeah, yeah. It's her trying to take back control that she doesn't have.
Yeah.
Selena then sees the king's sword that I believe is pronounced Nothung. I forgot to listen to the audiobook prior to this, so I apologize if I got that wrong. This is the first sword of many swords we're going to come across in the Throne of Glass series that are named. And when something is named, especially an inanimate object, we got to look it up because obviously SJM has prescribed meaning to it. So Nothong may be derived from Gram. In Norse mythology, Gram means wrath and is a sword that was used by Sigurd to kill the dragon Fafnir. Gram is also known as Balmung or Nothung. In modern German, Nothung, which I'm sure is pronounced differently because it's German, also translates to child of need. Just putting that out there for us to think back on for the future.
Yep.
I think the most relevant meaning to me is the meaning of wrath. As Selena looks around the throne room and she sees all the competitors and all of the sponsors, Selena counts that there are 23 other competitors. Quote, 23 men stood between her and freedom. How many men did she kill when she nearly escaped from Endovier? She killed the taskmaster plus 23 guards. It's a reminder for us that we should be confident in Selena's ability to defeat these men. She's defeated this many men in one go before.
She's like, I can take them.
It's
It's
fine.
fine. It's easy. No big deal. Selena's watching the competition. She's eyeing everyone. Quote, most of the competitors' attention jumped right over her. She gritted her teeth. The dress had been a mistake. I would like to say that this is not how Selena's been thinking, right? I feel like she's enjoyed sometimes people's underestimation of her. Now, there's been times where she gets annoyed when Kale underestimates her. So I'm not saying it's going to be completely against what she's thought of here, but expecting her to be a threat is a way for her to manipulate them. That's the normal mentality. So why is she now not thinking the way that she's been thinking? And I think it's because she's thrown off kiltered because the king is there and he might discover her true identity. There is a bit of a conflict, right? Of her going back and forth of, why don't you see me as a threat, to, haha, you idiots don't see me as a threat. And I think it kind of shows you where she's at in these tense moments.
Mm-hmm.
When she's more stressed, she gets annoyed that people don't see her as a threat.
I completely agree. The king's presence is definitely part of it. She's just been through this sequence where people are complimenting her or appreciating for her appearance. And what I'm seeing then is she is an 18-year-old who is seeking, for lack of a better word, words of affirmation. She
Yeah.
is seeking affirmation that she is being perceived the way she wants to be perceived. So for her to walk into this room and to not be seen as a threat goes counter to what she's expecting. She's expecting to be seen as a threat because she knows what she's capable of instead of being like, aha, they fell for my disguise. I think part of that is what we've seen with Philippa the last 24 hours. Philippa has really thrown Selena off her game. Philippa has taken away the power that Selena places in clothing, disguising a threat and making it more about you're not playing the game in court. So she is focused more on attracting the attention of men in a way that makes her feel pretty instead of being focused on not attracting the attention of men and focusing on being powerful. I think this also creates a situation where instead of feeling underestimated, Selena is starting to feel like a prime target because a woman who they don't take seriously is the easiest person to kill on the battlefield.
Yep.
So in some ways, instead of blending in, she's standing out and standing out in a way that is going to work against her.
Absolutely. This is a young adult book. Not every single thing has to be brought back to things I'm about to say, trigger warning. I immediately would be, whenever I'm in a room full of men, I always think of, I'm always uncomfortable, I think about how many men could I try to overpower and stuff. And there's never the conversation or threat of sexual assault. I'm wondering once we go forward if there are underlining aspects of that.
Mhm.
Uh, I'm just flagging that because you have a lot of men who are assuming they can overpower her. And at this point, without a year of training, with her still being weak, they could, you
Yeah.
know? It's not said, it's not pointed out, it doesn't always have to be there. But if you're going to have a world where women are seen as things to be manipulated and their greatest worth is ensnaring a man, sexual assault is part of this world. And I'm going to be keeping an eye out for that because it's just, this isn't part of my notes. But as we're talking about all these men just kind of like glancing over her, she's a beautiful young woman.
Mhm.
And these are
Mhm.
criminals.
I was about to say these are criminals. I'm confident some of them are guilty of sexual assault.
Yeah. Not that all criminals are guilty of sexual assault. And there's
No, no,
plenty of
no, no.
non-criminals. There's plenty of non-criminals that are that. I just
Yes.
wanted to flag that we recognize it too. But we're just saying that this is an unsavory group.
Yes.
Now, against Kale's warning, Selena looks at the king. Quote, by accident, her gaze slipped onto the king's face, and she found his dark eyes staring into hers. The king smirked. Her heart threw itself backwards and clung to the bars of her rib cage. Murder. He should be hanged from the gallows. He had killed many more than she, people undeserving and defenseless. He'd destroyed cultures, destroyed invaluable knowledge, destroyed so much of what had once been bright and good. Now, before I go into, or actually, like, there's your clues about her past. She's passionate about what he's done and hurt other people, which she should be because he's horrible, and it's personal to her. However, I would like to look at this moment where she describes it that her heart threw itself backwards and clung onto the bars of her rib cage. Her heart is a prisoner to her own body. She is a prisoner. Her emotions are a prisoner to her own body. Her heart doesn't get to hide from him.
Mhm.
Her heart is exposed.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. And I describe it later as she's like a caged animal.
Yeah. Yeah.
For first time readers, we should be curious why she feels this way when she had so much bravado in front of Dorian and Kale and the guards when they picked her up from Endovier. And this is a great moment to clue us in. It's those breadcrumbs that Jack is alluding to. During the king's speech to the competitors and sponsors, Selena contemplates the definition of being the king's champion. Quote, what was a champion but a dressed up name for a murderer? I found this really funny because it's really no different than an assassin. An assassin is a murderer too.
Yeah. Assassins can be murderers too, Amy. Equal opportunity.
That's right. The difference, though, is that as the king's champion, there's ownership. She has to work for someone she doesn't like, whose goals don't align with hers. And even though it's a double standard, it's, as Jack said, very, very personal. Unlike an assassin, this king has, quote, destroyed cultures, destroyed invaluable knowledge, destroyed so much of what once had been bright and good. And that is the line that the champion and the king cross that Selena as an assassin did not, I assume. Before the end of the audience with the king, we learned that the competition will be 13 weeks long and that the 23 contestants will be expected to be eliminated more than one at a time because the trials are perilous. Now, 13, by some,
You're going back to the angel numbers.
I have to. 13 in Western culture, it can be viewed as an unlucky number. It is also a number we see later in the series associated with some witches. So it is a recurring number that Escham uses. Now, if you've listened to our Crescent City seasons, I talked about angel numbers a lot. I think
Before you get into angel numbers, there's no like official book on angel numbers. This is just more
no.
like fun looking things up.
Yeah, this is just Google it in different websites will tell you different things.
Yeah.
And it is what it is. But I do feel like what we've seen in other SJM works, especially later in her career, is that numbers mean something.
Yeah. Yeah.
And so, because I know this number to recur in the series, I felt it important to look up. And 13 can be the sign of a fresh start, of innovation, of transformation. And I feel that to be true for Selena in this novel.
Yeah. I mean, and 13 is often associated with unlucky, right?
Right.
Friday the 13th. I really feel like Taylor Swift has reclaimed the concept of 13. I don't see it as often like that, as
Mhm.
being associated with unlucky. I think that when you look around you, you'd be surprised how much people incorporate the fear of 13. A lot of buildings that have over 13 floors won't have a 13 floor option. They just skip over
Mhm.
that.
Mhm.
And pay attention. You'll be surprised with how much the number 13 is lacking throughout. So
Yeah.
I think this was a good example of SJM saying, well, what's a very uncomfortable number?
Yep. Yep. 13 for just because in that is not true in Asian cultures.
Yeah,
In
yeah.
Asian cultures it's the number 4 because it sounds like the word for death. So in Asian buildings, in Asian countries, they skip the 4th floor.
When I didn't know that for the longest time until you explained it to me, because when I lived in the UK, one of the years I lived there, I was with another student who was from, oh, I think she was also from China. And I say also because Amy grew up in China, in case we have new listeners. I used to I mean, you know me, I love eggs, scrambled eggs, poached eggs, sunny side up eggs, and I always do 4, and it freaked her out all the time. The first time she noticed it, she just walked out of the room and just, like, always made comments about, "You always do 4 eggs," and I thought for the longest time, I thought she was judging me, and I was like, "2 eggs isn't enough, and 3 is sure, but I wanna be full for the day, let me have 4 eggs." And then you explained it to me, and I thought, "Oh, okay, I see why she was concerned for me."
You are inviting
"No,
death
don't you,
into your
don't."
life.
I was not. No, I was not.
That was her perception. That is not the truth.
No, no, no. I still cook with 4 eggs. So after meeting with his father, Dorian says that he wants to talk to Selena. Quote, Dorian said with a roguish wink, remembering how he smiled at the court lady the other day, she kept her gaze ahead. Dorian use of his charm, now directed at her, puts Selena off. But what puts her off more is the fact that he used that on another woman.
Mm,
And is there jealousy? Is this her realizing that this is just part of his weapons and he's trying to direct it at her? Yes. He's dipping into her toolbox at this point. And I'm really going to drill in the fact that Selena and Dorian are mirrors of one another. Quote, Selena was unable to keep a hint of a smile from her lips. Both she and the prince had grown up under strict, unforgiving fathers. Well, father figure in her case. Arabin had never replaced the father she'd lost, nor had he ever tried to. But at least Arabin had an excuse for being equal parts tyrannical and doting. They're very similar. At this point, Selena doesn't know that the king smacks his son around like that. But what she does perceive is the fact that the king is very harsh, very strict, and Dorian is not like that at all. Like I said, they're going to continue to confuse that shared experience, the mirroring of one another, as intimacy, and the fact that they're both good looking people. But I can understand, because that is how intimacy is made, right? The
yeah.
intimacy is made from relating to someone else and saying, wow, we're really similar. But what happens when two hot people are like that?
They
Chemistry inevitably happens.
It's true. It's true. As Jack said, Dorian is using Selena's own tools against her, and she doesn't know how to feel about that. She has a hard time figuring Dorian out. Earlier, when they were in the presence of the king, she was shocked at, quote, his impertinence in interrupting his father. Dorian doesn't act like he fears the king as much as Selena does, and that is odd to her because the king is terrifying and he's an asshole. In this moment, Dorian is flirting with and charming toward Selena, and that's the complete opposite of the king himself and the way he acts. And so Selena wonders, quote, why had the king of Adarlan let his son become anything but an identical copy of himself? It's an interesting question because the same can be asked of Selena and Arobin as well. Now, we don't know that as first-time readers, but it is a very good question when we see someone like Holland, Dorian's younger brother, who is very much like his father.
Yeah, I will never understand Holland. Why make him 10? Dorian at this point gives Selena her new backstory. Quote, to everyone in the castle, Dorian said, your name will be Lillian Gordania. There's something about Dorian being able to control the perception of her here. You know, he's having people assume all these things about her, that she's a jewel thief and that she came from a noble background, and she's, her entire life is changed, or the perception of her life is changed.
Mhm.
And we're having another moment where knowledge is power, and we're getting that perception as power here. And Dorian has all of the control to that when it comes to Selena.
Yeah, and she's not pleased with it. I think she doesn't like the backstory or the jewel thief detail because in some ways it's getting a little bit close to her truths
Yeah.
of, being a royal, of now she wasn't a jewel
Yeah.
thief, but she was an assassin.
Yeah.
And it's unsavory, but also almost too revealing. When Dorian tries to pester Selena for compliments of like, didn't I do a good job coming up with a new
I did
story
it.
for you?
Yeah.
She is very deadpan. It's very fine indeed, she said dully, if it pleases you. Like, she is just not letting him get his way.
Yeah.
And it goes back to Jack's point. She just doesn't want to let Dorian charm her.
I also kind of take it as her being insulted by the
Mm-hmm.
fact of just a mere jewel thief.
Yeah.
Ew.
Yeah.
I toppled empires,
Yeah. Yeah.
kind of a vibe. Dorian makes a joke about the competition, and it throws Selena off. Quote, the prince's smile grew. I bet they won't expect to be trounced by a beautiful lady. This was all a game to him, wasn't it? There's not much to analyze in this moment other than to say that Dorian, at this point in the book, this early on in the whole series, is so mentally different than where he grows into. And I think it's just important to point out these super shallow, vapid, inconsiderate, spoiled royal moments, because that's not who he's going to end up being.
Yeah. I can see what you're saying. I also feel like, though, Dorian's not wrong here.
Yeah.
Selena has lost sight of what it means to be disguised as a beautiful lady, whereas Dorian sees it for what it is. She is a wolf in sheep's clothing. And it's not a game. I actually think my interpretation of this is Dorian's trying to raise Selena's spirits. Like, he has
Yeah.
so much faith in her and the success of the manipulation that's just taken place.
Yep.
But because she's so focused on the encounter with the king, because she's so focused on the things Philippa has been trying to ingrain in her,
Mhm.
she doubts herself instead of sees the success of what's just occurred.
Absolutely. Absolutely. We see the woman in red again, except now she's in white. And now we're seeing that it's Caltaine, right? And she makes this appearance. I think Selena is horrible to her, as well as Dorian. Caltaine is a product of her environment, and they're so mean to her without considering anything about her.
Mm-hmm.
I personally think that this is done on purpose. I think that we, the reader, yes, I think sometimes the reader kind of goes along with it and we laugh along too. I think that it's used very well to set up Caltaine in a way that we might judge her too, even though she's
Mm-hmm.
done literally nothing wrong. But I also feel like we're kind of meant to start here of they're mean to her because of how much Caltaine goes through.
Mm-hmm.
And I hope they feel like shit later. I just want to ask, would it have been different? All of this would have been different if they were just nicer to her.
Yeah, the story of Caltaine is extremely tragic.
Yeah.
I did not expect it from SJM's early work, just the amount of tragedy that surrounds Caltaine. And I think you're right that what's happening here is that she's being underestimated, undervalued, so that we can feel that tragedy even more in the future. I don't love it, but I love it. I don't know how to describe it because I think SJM does a really good job as the story progresses, but it is really unfortunate the way she gets treated just by being female.
Yeah, because that's what it is. They're treating her like crap because she's a woman.
Yeah.
Both of them. Both
Yeah.
Dorian and Selena. Kaltain is a woman who is attractive. Kaltain is a woman who's just trying to play the game
Yeah.
of life at this point for her. We get clues of her addiction a little bit earlier, even when we just see her as the woman in red. She makes a comment about wanting to go smoke a little bit more. We
Yeah.
get her on her way to go see Duke Parrington after this. So we get these clues about her, and I I look forward to analyzing the reveal of how hard her life is and
Mhm.
how far she descends, because I wonder if this was a commentary that SJM is giving us of, do not judge a book by its cover. Two of our main protagonists are doing that right here. You, the
Mhm.
reader, are doing that here. You're following further tricks. This isn't even first person, you know?
Yeah.
This is, I
Yeah.
mean, it's a narrow third person, but we, the reader, should be doing better about removing ourselves from them and saying, oh, this is actually bad.
Yeah, the irony here is that Selena is judging Keltane for her appearance when Selena has also just been judged for her appearance.
Yeah.
And so it's this
Yeah.
huge double standard that appearance is not everything, and Selena should know that the best, but
Yep.
she only it applies it to herself and no one else.
Truly.
And I think Selena cares more than she likes to let on. Quote, Kaltane's voice was high but smooth and calculated. She'd changed. She now wore a gown of white and gold, which, by the way, Selena knows Dorian likes because Kaltane said it earlier.
Yep.
That, despite herself, Selena greatly admired. She was unfairly stunning. These are not the words of a young woman who doesn't care about Kaltane
Yep.
and what she looks like. This is the observation of someone who cares and feels threatened by Kaltane. And I think it's easier for Selena and for us as readers to write Kaltane off through the lens of jealousy.
Yeah.
Rather than taking the time to take her seriously.
Yep. Just to butt in real fast, we get this moment where Selena realizes, and we know, like you said, Dorian prefers white and what is it, gold. And, before Kaltane was wearing red, and now she switched to gold, white and gold. From Selena's point of view, what we're seeing is, she's just trying to kiss up to the prince, which is yes.
Mhm.
But what we saw before was her wearing red. And yes, that's a representation of the royal family, the royal court, and it's supposed to show that Kaltane is fully immersed in this royal court and how she acts and how everyone's treated. However, I also took that as a moment of saying, maybe I should stand apart. Maybe I should wear red. I know everyone else is going to wear this color. And what we see is Kaltane folding to the mold, folding
Mm.
to what is expected. Kaltane wanted to be separate, wanted to wear the red, and something happened between then and now, whether it's her own insecurity or other people pressuring her. But Selena kind of interprets it as like, and we, the reader, kind of look at it as, oh, she's just trying to kiss ass. Of course.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later, but I think what we're seeing is, and I think you've already said it, Jack, Kaltane is a product of her environment. Yes, you did say that. Give the woman a break.
Yeah.
Excuse us while we hydrate and you listen to this ad. This episode is sponsored by Manscaped, the brand trusted by over 11 million men worldwide for their face and body trimmers, hygiene essentials, and premium boxers. If so many men swear by them, you can bet your Valentine will too.
The Handyman Rocket Man is a sleek, powerful, compact face shaver that helps guys ditch the mess. Honestly, why get into a fight this Valentine's Day? Make that bathroom clean. Plus, since it's compact, it's easy to travel with, so your man can have that clean shave during your romantic weekend getaway.
The Handyman has a unique dual blade system which features both a standard foil shaver and a long hair trimming blade, and comes equipped with skin-safe technology to help reduce nicks and cuts so that he looks handsome for you on date night. So give him the gift of grooming this Valentine's Day. Get 20% off plus free shipping with code BOOKTALK, that's BOOKTALK, at manscaped.com.
That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code BOOKTALK, BOOKTALK, at manscaped.com. That way, you both can look great this Valentine's Day, because we already know you're going to.
My new focus in life and in my wardrobe is quiet luxury. The things that are nice, that make me feel good, but I know are worth the money that I spent on it without being boisterous.
I've definitely noticed that I've been spending more time on elevating what I'm purchasing, and some of my favorite go-to items have been from Quince. That's because they offer a range of high-quality items, but with prices that are within reach and very reasonable.
They have 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses that I love to wear to work.
Quince items are usually priced between 50 to 80% less than other similar brands.
They work with top factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes and cut out the middleman in the process.
One of my all-time favorite cardigans is actually from Quince, and every time I wear it, I always get compliments of how cozy and how soft it is.
My favorite Quince item is this button-up washable silk blouse that I wear to work, and what I love about it is it's so versatile. I can pair it with a cardigan, I can wear it on its own, I can wear it with a blazer, and it always makes me feel good about myself.
Give yourself the luxury gift you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK. As most of our listeners know, I'm getting married, and let me tell you, getting married is expensive.
Let me tell you, being a guest to your wedding is expensive, and that's where Acorns come in.
Acorns is a financial wellness app that makes it easy to start saving and investing for your future, and in my case, my wedding.
You don't need to be an expert. Acorns will recommend a diversified portfolio that matches you to your money goals.
You don't need to be rich. Acorns lets you get started with the spare money you've got right now, even if all you've got is spare change.
Money planning stresses me out quite a bit, and Acorns makes it so easy.
It only takes 5 minutes to create an account with Acorns and start investing. It gives you small, simple steps to get you and your money on track, which is sometimes just the hardest part.
I love it because no matter what age you are, it's always important to be able to take control of your money and your investments.
So sign up now and join the over 13 million all-time customers who've already saved and invested over $22 billion with Acorns. Head to acorns.com/booktalk, that's BOOKTALK, or download the Acorns app to get started. Paid client endorsement compensation provides incentive to positively promote Acorns. Tier 1 compensation provided. Investing involves risk. Acorns Advisors LLC, an SEC-registered investment advisor. View important disclosures at acorns.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK.
Ryan Reynolds here from Mint Mobile with a message for everyone paying big wireless way too much. Please, for the love of everything good in this world, stop. With Mint, you can get premium wireless for just $15 a month. Of course, if you enjoy overpaying, no judgments, but that's weird. Okay, one judgment. Anyway, give it a try at mintmobile.com/switch.
Upfront payment of $45 for 3-month plan, equivalent to $15 per month required. Intro rate first 3 months only, then full price plan options available. Taxes and fees extra. See full terms at mintmobile.com.
Because of the narrow point of view of this scene, of the perspective in general, the narration tries to convince us, and Selena tries to convince us that she doesn't really care, despite all the signs that point to the fact that she does. Quote, the assassin might have bothered to care about the slight from Caltaine if she had any interest in courtiers. Selena's trying to distance herself from this idea of court and courtiers by calling herself an assassin. She's trying to create distance, but I think she's trying to do it for her own benefit, not for the reader's benefit. She's trying to tell herself, you don't care, which I think is not true given everything that we've just seen.
It's a very obviously this isn't true moment. She's lying to herself. Oh, Selena. Selena's just obsessed, not obsessed, but very focused on Caltaine's body. Quote, Selena studied Caltain's narrow waist. Was it really that small? Or could she barely breathe in her corset? Again, I feel like sometimes writers, when even to today, I see this all the time. They'll describe a character who is thin, but in order to make them seem relatable, they'll add an even thinner character just to
Mhm.
say, "Oh, well, I can't imagine being like that." When we already know for a fact that this doesn't even make sense because she would still be deathly thin at this point.
Yeah.
But we know for a fact Selena is thin. She is not a mid-sized character or a plus-size character, and there's different ranges of thinness, right? That happens though, but it's the hyper focus and fixation all on Caltain's body that I feel fascinated by. I feel fascinated by her fascination in
Mhm.
comparison. Like I said, we know that she's thin, but like, why the competition? Why do you have to make her body a threat? And that's a very female thing. I get it. Like,
Mhm.
this is a very female experience. The experience of young girls going through their own body. I compare myself all the time. I am in my bathroom. I look at my body and I go, oh, not too bad. I go out into the real world in the middle of Los Angeles and I am a depressed person. So I don't want to say that Selena isn't part of that. It's just it's hard to see that sometimes.
Yeah, and this is one of those instances where SJM as a writer doesn't have to make this Selena's reality.
Yeah.
It's relatable to us as readers because we are female and we have gone through this and continue to go through this ourselves. Nevertheless, as a writer, that doesn't have to be the character's focus if the
Yes.
writer doesn't want it to be the focus.
It did feel like an insertion.
It does feel like an insertion, and to me, that is speaks to SJM's youth as a writer.
Mhm.
It speaks to the youth of the character, and I think as an author, as a early in her career author, I choose to believe SJM has not found other ways to express Selena's feelings of being defensive without
Yeah.
hyper focusing on Caltain's body.
Yeah.
If Selena has just been very, very vulnerable, she naturally is going to lash out in order to feel some sort of control and power.
Yep.
Unfortunately, she chooses to do it by focusing on Keltain's body, which she could have chose to focus on it different ways. She could have been like, if it had to be about Keltain's body, it could be about her lack of muscle. It could
Right?
be how she probably couldn't even carry a weapon, right?
Yep,
It could be
exactly.
it could be about things that make sense for an assassin.
I mean, why isn't she hyper focused on the fact that Caltain's body probably doesn't have scars?
Right.
The fact that she doesn't have lashings on her back. Those are real things that is in Selena's truth and reality, and I think would make sense to her character. We
Yeah.
already know she's self-conscious about the scars. We already know that they're hard for her to, I don't want to say self-conscious, but there's something that she has to deal with, right?
Yeah.
Compare that.
Yeah.
Well said, Amy. You did
Thank
it.
you.
You nailed it. Continuing on in the scene, quote, Dorian answered, I supposed, he drawled, turning those brilliant blue eyes on Selena. Oh, and for more context here, Caltaine is saying, oh, so, will Selena and Kale be sad when Selena goes? And will you be sad? Or like, just something about Selena. And, Dorian's one who inserted Kale being the one to be sad to see her leave. And then he's now inserting himself in this narrative. Quote, Dorian answered, I suppose, he drawled, turning those brilliant blue eyes on Selena, that it will be difficult for Lady Lillian and I as well, perhaps more so. He just claimed that both men have a claim on her. Like, kind of
Scandalous.
scandalous. I mean, kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy here. Both of them will have a thing with her. However, flat out said that Kale would be sad to see her go, and now he's saying that he'll be sad to see her go. And while that is a fan fiction that I am totally on board with if you make them older, but he is hindering her reputation.
Mhm.
What he's hinting at is Dorian claiming Selena sexually, not just with him, but with Kale.
Yeah, that's super damning for a woman.
Oh, yeah. You think she's not going to go and gossip about that? If you're trying to tell us that Caltaine and their perception of Caltaine is that she's probably gossipy, very vapid, very like, going to go and talk shit no matter what, you just gave her a lot of fuel to the fire there. And to claim anything sexually about someone else is just not okay either. It's do not own that you know what I would do. I mean, I would do. I've seen the potential fan art of this.
Oh,
Oh, have
I
you
haven't
not?
thought about it.
Oh, I've seen some fan art on it. I'll send it to you.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because Dorian is being such a douchebag,
Yeah.
and I don't know that Selena gets mad enough about it.
I don't think she gets mad at all. I think she runs with it. She plays this moment up and she feels gratified and almost like, yes, he's showing attention to me. We know that she gets amped up with compliments.
Yeah.
And now she's fallen victim to this idea of men want me sexually. Two men want me sexually. Compliments.
Well, and also, to what extent is Dorian implying we've both had her sexually already? Like,
Yes.
Sel-
Yes.
Selena, the real Selena in my heart, would smack Dorian across the face
Yeah.
for that implication because it tarnishes her reputation as a lady,
Yeah.
quote
Yeah.
unquote, and puts her in a really bad position in this competition among the court. Like, this is a huge blow to her reputation,
Yeah.
and no one is taking it seriously. That just continues to speak to how young SJM was when she wrote this, in my mind.
Absolutely. And Selena, the Aelin that I have in my heart, would have the attitude of do not assume you
Yeah.
have access to my body.
Yep.
Do not assume that I would allow you to touch me, let alone be inside me.
Yeah.
You do not get to live in a reality where you assume that.
Yeah.
It's hard because that is not what we're seeing here. And maybe that's something that she grows into. Maybe this is something that we're seeing Selena actually starting off in a much more vulnerable, insecure state. And it is something that we will see her build into her confidence. And, maybe I'll run with that, the Aelin is not who we see right now. She is not Aelin.
Yeah. Yeah. That could definitely be very true. And she's just, again, she is just trying to survive.
Yeah.
She's just happy to be here because fuck the mines of Endovier. I could see it a bunch of different ways.
Yep. Yep.
Because there is part of me that is like the SJM who wrote Kingdom of Ash
Yeah.
and, and House of Earth and Blood
Yeah.
would not allow this to fly.
I would love her to rewrite this book.
Mm-hmm.
Keep a lot of things similar, but just give it another whirl at things. I think she would do wonders with it.
I do feel like what makes, I think, this book tough for some readers who've read ACOTAR or Crescent City prior to coming to Throne of Glass.
Which was me. Like, I read
Which was
the
me
first,
too.
I read the first ACOTAR. I got into this whole world right after book 1 of ACOTAR. And then I went and read Throne of Glass.
Yeah, I barely read the Throne of Glass series a year ago.
Yeah.
And that was after reading all of ACOTAR and all of Crescent City.
Yep.
So to me, this is
why it's hard.
This is why it's hard. And it feels like a young author projecting their femininity into the character.
Yeah. And also remember the time. This was published in 2012.
And she wrote this before that.
It was published in 2012. She was 26. She started when she was 16. So that is 2002.
I thought she was our age.
No, she's a little older than us.
Okay, she's 38. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, she's a couple of years older than us.
Yeah.
But, like, think about the time. And I know I've looked at our demographic and we have a younger audience. And I don't want to dismiss what they've experienced, but to be a young woman during this time, women were pitted against each other. Christina Aguilera, Jessica Simpson, like, all these women were constantly pitted against each other. It was an absolute show of who can wear the lowest low-rise jean. And, people wearing low-rise jeans is a joke today because your vagina isn't showing. That's not even a joke. Like, women had to get waxes in order to wear some of the jeans back in the day. When I read this book, I read this as a woman who grew up in that time.
Yeah.
And published it with the idea of, we're moving out of that time. But it's a transition book. It's a transition book between what is then and eventually becomes now. Not that now is perfect. Not that now is a fantastic place to be. But it was a really screwed up time for women.
Yeah. And this is the stuff we cared about. Like, We identify it with it because we lived it.
Yes.
You know, if I ever had a daughter, I would hope that she would not have to have this similar experience.
Agreed.
But this is how society made us.
Yeah. And this is where it's like I would coach the youth of today, you know, the next generation of young women, of saying, hey, society has trained you, even in today's world, to view women as competition in this route. It is up to us to deprogram that before it fully
Mhm.
programs.
Yep.
All right, so going back into this, to continue this theme of frustration and ownership and women and this whole scene. Anyway, now we're talking about Selena's dress at this point. And quote, I had it made for her, Dorian said, casually picking at his nails. The assassin and the prince glanced at each other, their blue eyes reflecting the same intent. At least they had one common enemy. So first I'm going to talk about the ownership, right? Dorian owns Selena because he's literally getting clothes made for her, which, yes, like, you know, there's a romantic element. I had it made for her. I get that, but it's a reminder that Selena is at his mercy. And then once you remember that, it's less romantic and more of a reminder of the power dynamic. Now,
Mhm.
I ask here, why the fuck is Keltane the enemy for both of them? At least we have a common enemy.
Mhm.
This is perception. This is the perception that we've been talking about. It's how Selena worries that she's going to be received. It's how Dorian worries that he's going to be perceived. Like, he doesn't want to be viewed with Keltane. He doesn't,
Yeah.
but they're also perceiving Keltane in a different way. And if you look at it, there's actually nothing threatening about her.
No, there isn't. And I love that in this moment. I think whether by accident or intention, we have to pay attention when the character's title or status is used over the character's name. The
Yeah.
assassin and the prince glanced at each other. It's not
Yep.
Selena, it's not Dorian, it is the assassin and the prince have decided this random girl, young
Girl.
woman,
Yeah.
is an enemy. They're so powerful, they don't need to make an enemy out of a girl. There's no reason for this. It feels like a forced connection,
Yeah.
just like the letter writing.
Yeah.
It's a device for the author to build intimacy between these two characters.
And what better way to build intimacy than to diminish another woman?
Yep.
Apparently.
Yep. I want to think about why Dorian and Selena despise Keltane, because yes, Keltane really hasn't given them a reason to dislike her. So as I thought about this, I wanted to think about what Keltane means symbolically to Dorian and Selena, because I think that's the only way we can get to what SGM's trying to accomplish.
Agreed.
From Dorian's point of view, Keltane is doing the things society has told her to do. Look good, find a successful man to marry, give him babies. That is her only purpose in life, and
Yep.
that is what she's trying to do. She just happens to have focused on Dorian because she's a courtier. Now, if Dorian listened to his father, which he despises, Keltane would be a good option. Why not rebel against his father by rejecting Keltane? Dorian doesn't want to be a breeding mare. Keltane is perfect for him to achieve the breeding mare status.
Yep.
So this is really, in my point of view, out of spite against his father. Let's turn to Selena's point of view. Keltane represents the easy life Selena could have had, and maybe should have had, if the King of Adarlan had not killed the royal family of Terrazin.
Yep.
Keltane is everything Selena would have been. Keltane also uses clothing as a tool of seduction, the feminine, instead of as a tool of power, the masculine. She is fulfilling what Philippa expects instead of what Aelin is accustomed to. And so Aelin, being challenged by Philippa all the time, looks on Keltane with jealousy because Keltane is a successful example.
Yeah. Yep.
And that, to me, is why it's so easy for these two characters to dislike Keltane, because Keltane represents what others want from them.
I love that. I love that so much. Good job.
Thank
Chef's
you.
kiss to you.
Mwah,
Mwah.
mwah.
Mwah. So as Dorian leaves the situation, he charms Selena, quote, she watched with raised eyebrows as he lifted her hands to his lips. His mouth was soft and smooth upon her skin. The kiss sent a red-hot line of fire up through her arm that singed her cheeks. She fought against the urge to step back or snack him. Until our next meeting, Lady Lillian, he said with a charming smile. She would have highly enjoyed seeing Caltain's face. This is all performative. This is for Caltain's sake. Like, poor girl. Poor girl. Not only, though, in this moment is Dorian making it more difficult for Selena, he's using attraction as a way to manipulate not just Caltain, but Selena too.
Yeah.
Even though this is performative for Caltain, this is also performative for Selena. He is not without charm. He wants to charm everyone here. And Selena, at this point, is yet to fall for his charm completely. And Selena is on board with this. It's why they are both going to be attracted to each other. They are similar. They are mirrors. They both want to treat people, Caltain, like shit.
Yeah, and if Dorian hadn't done it first, Selena probably would have.
Oh, she would have been giving him a kiss on the cheek or slap his ass as he walked away. I don't know, something.
Slapped his ass.
He just slapped his ass too. Thanks, sugar, and then walk away.
Speaking to this idea of Dorian and Selena being mirrors of each other, there was an earlier statement made by Dorian about Kale and Selena that I think is relevant here. Dorian makes a joke that Kale and Selena are acting so similar and therefore are like siblings. Quote, "From the way you two are blatantly ignoring me, I'd say she could pass for your sister. Though you don't really look like each other, it would be hard to pass off someone who's so pretty as your sister." And that's what's happening here with Dorian and Selena. They are acting the same. They could, in fact, be siblings. And I like that because in the end, they actually do love each other like family.
Yeah.
It's almost a self-fulfilling prophecy.
I feel like there's a lot of self-fulfilling here.
Yeah. To what extent did SJM know where it was going to go? And she does that tongue-in-cheek, laughing to herself.
Yeah, absolutely. Even Kale, though, sees the mirroring between the prince and Selena, which is funny because Dorian says, Kale and Selena, you guys could be siblings. You're ignoring me. And now Kale is looking to see the similarities between the two of them happening. Quote, "You and the crown prince share the same sense of humor, it seems." And then Selena says, "Perhaps he and I will become dear friends and you will be left to rot." Love triangle. Love triangle. Right from me. Yep. I love a good old-fashioned love triangle. I'm going to examine this next moment that people are probably not going to like. Kale says, quote, "Dorian is more inclined to associate with ladies of better breeding and beauty." She whipped her head to look at him. He smiled. "How vain you are." She glared. "I hate women like that. They're so desperate for the attention of men that they'd willingly betray and harm members of their own sex. And we claim men cannot think with their brains. At least the men are direct about it." The contradiction here, it hurts me. Like, it really did hurt me to read this. And we are giving grace to her age, to SJM's age, but we have to analyze this moment. So I'm going to start with this part first. The fact that Kale insults Selena, tells her why Dorian won't be with her because, someone with her breeding, and it's hilarious because she's a princess, who better than with her. And the fact that it's Selena's instinct, though, to insult women, and we've been seeing that as a go-to here. We saw that before they even entered the palace with the women, the peasant women, smiling at Dorian, and then she calls them ridiculous, right? We see that with Caltain, and she thinks that she's, some kind of idiot. And now here she is claiming this false sense of feminism, that we see in media and writing. It's this, I'm going to say something absolutely true and feminist, but I'm not going to apply it in reality. She's not a girl's girl. That's the fact. Selena is not a girl's girl. And I don't think historically SJM is very good at writing characters that are girls all the time. They develop into it.
Yeah, I completely agree. What's funny to me about this quote and tragic is that if Caltain said this about Selena, it would still be true.
Yes. Yes.
Right? Caltain could very much say, "I hate women like Selena. They're so desperate for the attention of men that they'd willingly betray and harm the members of their own sex." It is the exact same thing Selena has been doing. And she lacks the self-awareness of that.
Yes.
I think it's important for us to acknowledge, though, that this is Selena's starting point. The way Selena and Aelin will develop we're going to see how her relationship with Lysandra changes. We're going to see how she comes to grow and respect other women. It is a very, very long journey.
Yep.
And we don't know as first time readers that's in her future, but this is a very clear picture of where Selena is and where Aelin will end. And
Yep.
I do appreciate that journey.
Yeah.
I don't like it
I
right
don't
now.
like it. But like, and I'll repeat it again. SJM does do that with her female characters a lot. They'll
Yeah.
start isolated, and people might say, "What about Bryce?" Well, Danica's dead, and
Yeah.
sorry, spoiler if anyone hasn't read it, but that happens in like the first couple chapters. But what we see though is the fact that Juniper and Fury for Bryce, she's isolated for them. Farah, she's isolated from her sisters.
Mm-hmm.
Aelin, she's isolated from women and does not know how to interact with women. She doesn't get it. And that's something that we all learn. So maybe this is SJM figuring that theme out, and that's just something that she does a lot. But
Yeah.
holy guacamole, it is hard. It is a hard read.
Yeah.
Now, Kale and Selena have a bonding moment, and what a more bonding moment way than making fun of Kaltain, because let's just kick women more. Quote, they chuckled. Now, at this point, they've gone back and forth. Also, the insult that they laugh at is, I feel bad for Kaltain. I feel bad for her father. People are raised the way that they were raised. Anyway, continue.
Yeah.
Quote, they chuckled, and he lifted his arm, linked with hers, a bit higher. This is the first time that Selena gets Kale to laugh. Kale has been very closed up. Kale has been very strict and regimented, and now here he is laughing with her. And I think this would have been a better moment to examine. I think this would have been a better moment to look into. A missed moment as an author, but I just want to flag that this is a huge moment, a pivotal change between the two.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's a really good point. And as I thought about this, I thought about some other things that we've read, and I pointed out in the first episode that there are these moments and big emotions where SJM calls out like the meaning of them or what
Yeah.
she's really thinking, that they don't need to be. And
Yeah.
then there are these other big impactful moments that are less called out. And I think that's a balance thing that as an author you have to figure out.
Yep.
I also think that we see the significance of big moments through Selena's reactions and not the moments themselves, because Selena is the center of her own universe.
Aren't we all?
Yes. And so for this interaction between Kale and Selena and this kind of change in Kale, Selena doesn't think about it in the moment, but after the fact, quote, though she rolled her eyes and slammed the door, Selena found herself humming throughout her meal. And that in and of itself shows to us that Selena's pleased, that she, someone who is humming to themselves, unless it's a sad song and you're
Yeah.
Jack, they
Yeah.
don't feel burdened by guilt.
Yeah.
Like she's just had a really successful moment, whether that's the interaction with Dorian or Kale or just putting down Kaltain in general.
Such an interesting. We only talked about 4 chapters
for 3 hours.
We're not done. Let's get into some breadcrumbs.
So, breadcrumbs and broomsticks, starting with the breadcrumbs in chapter 7. When looking at her rooms, Selena thinks, quote, something about the dimensions seemed a little off, something about the height of the walls, but she couldn't be sure. That's because she's going to find passages connected to her rooms later.
In chapter 8, we have word marks. Quote, she pointed at the marks engraved on the slate. It was a circle with a vertical line through the middle that extended beyond the circumference. Both ends of the line were hooked, one directing towards the other. What is this mark on the path here? SJM is getting her groundwork done. We are getting word marks. This will haunt us for books and series to come.
Yep. Still in chapter 8, Kale tells Selena about the clock tower in the palace courtyard and that, quote, the king had it built around Dorian's birth. That's around the same time the king was possessed by a Valg prince.
Which is why it was funny earlier when Kale said, he's just a man. No, he's not.
Yeah.
In chapter 8, Kale asks Selena, quote, did you ever visit the great library of Orinth? They say it was twice the size of this, and that it used to hold all the knowledge of the world. From the way Kale said used to, with a tinge of sadness, she assumed much had been lost, though part of her savored the hope that the master scholars had smuggled many of the priceless books to safety, and that those stuffy old men had had the good sense to start hiding 2,000 years worth of ideas and learnings. In hindsight, she is shoving down that the fact that she is a princess, but it also sounds like Parthos library in the Crescent City, and like that, intentionally destroyed by Valg or slash and the Asteri. Not that the Asteri are Valg.
But yeah, I was just like, this seems to be a theme.
Yeah, yeah.
Still in chapter 8, Selena tells Kale about her experience in the Great Library of Orinth. Quote, I went to the library when I was very young, though they wouldn't let me explore. The master scholars were too afraid I'd ruin some valuable manuscript. Probably one of the biggest clues about her powers.
Still in chapter 8, quote, I need my pipe, the woman murmured, rubbing her temples. I feel a headache coming on. As we mentioned earlier, this is Caltaine, and we will find out that this is a drug that Duke Parrington is using that will allow him to manipulate her in the future.
In chapter 9, Selena, when she meets the king in person and recalls her trial, quote, she had glanced at the king only once. It was enough to make her reckless to wish for any punishment that would take her far from him, even a quick death. Now, that could be because of his Valg possession, or it could be because he murdered her family.
Something. Isn't there a moment where he says he recognized her?
I think so. I think she was I think now that you say that, her fear was being recognized by him.
And he did recognize her. Yeah.
I think so, yeah.
This is why people should follow us on Instagram to tell us these things. Finally, in chapter 10, the first time Selena meets the king in person since her arrival to the palace. Quote, Selena's eyes only dared to venture as far as his chest, because she's afraid that if he sees her remarkable eyes, he'll know her true identity. And the answer is yes, he does. Let's get into some broomsticks now.
So we have some listener thoughts.
Just casual listener thoughts.
From H. Wonderly, my main thought is just how impressive this one is for a first book. Now, that's not something we usually hear.
Yeah.
But I can see already, 2 episodes in, how much work SJM is doing for setup.
I agree. I don't want anyone to listen to us and be confused by the fact that, wow, they're talking a lot. They're ripping some things apart. This must be a bad book. On the contrary, one of the things that we learned in college was the fact that if you can analyze a text thoroughly with 2 or more lenses, that is a well-written text. So the fact that we are able to several times in this episode take one scene, look at it in 2 different ways, even if it sounds like we're ripping something apart, we're not. This is actually an example of something that's well written, because there's a lot to work with here.
Yeah, keep in mind, we're covering roughly 40 pages of text.
Yeah.
And we're more than 3 hours into our recording. That blows my mind how much we're able to talk about these pages that I would expect, as her debut novel, would have barely anything to discuss. I would expect it to be heavily plot driven, with no foreshadowing, with very little nuance. And yet we're finding so much nuance.
It's hard not to compare this to the other works that we've read. I'm actually really happy that we're analyzing this after we've done ACOTAR and Crescent City, although we haven't finished either series. Well, it's fine. If you want to know, go listen. But, we just came out of analyzing House of Sky and Breath and Earth and Blood, right? And you and I agree, this, especially Earth and Blood, was some of her most technically advanced writing. Sometimes I felt like we didn't have that much to analyze because of how advanced her writing is.
Yeah.
Versus right now, the writing is very simplistic when you compare the two. And there is a lot more to bite onto here, because I think she's leaning more towards symbolism, leaning more, again, sometimes more obvious symbolism, which is not a bad thing. but I can tell that she's leaning there, which is also funny because then I can look at ACOTAR and see how it's kind of like the cross between the two.
Yeah, this very much already feels like our first season when we discussed A Court of Thorns and Roses. People really underestimate and undervalue that book.
Yeah.
And we did too.
Yep.
Until we analyzed it and we saw the richness of it. And I feel that richness here again in Throne of Glass.
Yep.
Because of her style of writing in these early books.
Yep. And then I want to also look at just one of those fun comments from Isabel _Nukem. They say Team Kale or Dorian. And at this point,
Dorian.
Kale. Kale hasn't put a woman down, hasn't gone to make Kaltain feel like shit.
Isn't that what he and Selena just bonded over?
Yeah, but he didn't do it to Kaltain's face.
That's so much better.
Dorian was picking on Kaltain.
I don't know. I think for me, I'm speaking to me the first time I read this.
Yeah.
It's so obvious SJM wants you to
lean Dorian.
Dorian, and I just follow her like a sheep.
Yeah, and I think, when it comes to the analysis part, and I agree, I was very much of Prince and Princess get together, woo! Like, it's still rooting for them far too late in the series. Like, I was way too late in the series still thinking that they could get together. I will say, though, at this point, in the analysis section, Kale has done less to Selena and others around him in a harmful way. I think he views Selena as a threat, and that's what she likes. As much as she kind of grumbles about it, he sees her. Dorian doesn't see her like that necessarily. I also think that Kale, even though he also made fun of Kaltain, he didn't actively try to make her feel uncomfortable.
Yeah, those are all good points. And don't get me, I'm not one of those people who hate Kale.
No, yeah.
So I think it is too early to ask the question of Team Kale or Team Dorian.
But keep asking us, guys. That's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I'll have opinions, and it will change with every episode.
Absolutely. And then also another comment from Maddie View 2002 official. They say, I have a feeling that Kane will be either their friend or the worst nightmare. Can't decide. I feel like they're currently reading the series, so I am nervous for them.
I am too, Maddie.
All right, you're on a journey. Maddie, finish reading the 3 books before you get to this.
I hope she never even gets to this where we tell her to keep reading. I hope she isn't listening.
No, I hope, listen, Maddie. Well, because in my version, she's finished the 3 books and is listening.
Yeah. That's fair.
Yeah. So let's get to the question of the week.
Jack, in this set of chapters, we get a glimpse into the age of the characters and how they act. At this point, how much is the plot hurt or bolstered by their age, if at all?
Both. I don't know how to say that, but both. I think I went into this book. I love how, we're only in chapter 10. I went into this book at the ripe old age of chapter 1. Thinking that their age was going to hurt everything. I felt like I was going to struggle thinking, wow, how am I supposed to believe that 18-year-olds are going to go save the world like this? Now, maybe I'll get to that point eventually. But at this point, very early on, first book, early chapters, their age makes sense. It's adding to it. It's making me believe the stupid choices at this point.
Yeah, I think their actions speak to their current ages. If Selena was 27 and acting this way, I would not read this book.
Yep, absolutely.
So for them to be, 18 and 20, 22, that's kind of the age.
Yeah,
I mean,
I believe it. Their frontal lobes are not done.
Right. And they don't understand yet how their actions impact others.
Yep.
And I think that's believable for this age group.
And the way that it helps the plot is the way that they're going to see how their actions impact others.
Yeah. And so maybe not the plot of this book, but the series.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. That's a quick answer, quick everything, but I feel like we've talked a lot, so.
Well, yeah, I feel like we had a lot to say about their age as we went.
Yeah. So, if you felt like that was a short answer, I recommend you hit play again. Because this is a lot. I read 3.5 hours. Let's wrap this up. Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Book Talk for Book Talk with Jac and Amy. Next week, we'll be exploring chapters 11 through 15 of Throne of Glass.
We encourage you to rate and subscribe to our show on your preferred podcast listening platform. We would also love to hear your thoughts based on today's conversation. You can submit your comments to our forum at booktalkforbooktalk.com for a chance to have your feedback discussed during a future mini episode or on a Patreon exclusive episode.
If you're enjoying the podcast, please visit our website, booktalkforbooktalk.com, to view our latest merch and learn about supporting the show through Patreon or Venmo. However, the best way to support the show is by following us on TikTok, Instagram, or YouTube at the handle Book Talk for Book Talk, and to post, like, share, spread the word. That is honestly the best way that you can help us out. Bye.
Very.
Too, so I can keep an eye on myself, but then no, I'm gonna keep you. Ignore me.
Okay.
I was talking to me.
Okay. I shouldn't ignore you. Got it.
Never ignore me.
I just want to drink my tea while it's not cold.
Yep. The fact that it's not cold
No,
is great.
it's cold.
Okay. What was that to say?
Thank you to all our Patreon supporters. My new focus in life and in my wardrobe is quiet luxury. The things that are nice, that make me feel good, but I know are worth the money that I spent on it without being boisterous.
I've definitely noticed that I've been spending more time on elevating what I'm purchasing, and some of my favorite go-to items have been from Quince. That's because they offer a range of high-quality items, but with prices that are within reach and very reasonable.
They have 100% Mongolian cashmere sweaters from $50 and washable silk tops and dresses that I love to wear to work.
Quince items are usually priced between 50 to 80% less than other similar brands.
They work with top factories that use safe, ethical, and responsible manufacturing processes and cut out the middleman in the process.
One of my all-time favorite cardigans is actually from Quince, and every time I wear it, I always get compliments of how cozy and how soft it is.
My favorite Quince item is this button-up washable silk blouse that I wear to work, and what I love about it is it's so versatile. I can pair it with a cardigan. I can wear it on its own. I can wear it with a blazer, and it always makes me feel good about myself.
Give yourself the luxury gift you deserve with Quince. Go to quince.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK, for free shipping on your order and 365-day returns.
That's QUINCE.com/booktalk to get free shipping and 365-day returns. Quince.com/booktalk, BOOKTALK. With a special shout out to our September 2024 Trophy Wives. Thank you, Olivia, Anya, Fiction Fan, Shelby, Liv, Amber, Veronica, Anne, Jackie, Nicole, Amelade, Jessica, Helen, Danica, Carissa, Colleen, Alexa, Sam, and Allison. To learn more about how to become a trophy wife, visit patreon.com/booktalkforbooktalk. Thanks, Trophy Wives!